I'm a good person. I have a good heart. It's just that, knowing that I like, 30 seconds before I ran into your friend over there, I had just saved a random stranger. I was walking the street and this guy is overdosed in the street, and so I Narcaned him back to life, I could have stole all his shit, ripped him off for all his stuff. Like most of the time I've ever overdosed, like happened to me, or I'm a good person, so I know that when someone fucks me over, that I know that they deserve what they have coming, because I don't do anything to anybody that, hasn't done something to me,
All right, Dopey.
Yeah.
Dopey, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
Well, I was born in New York City, and I lived in New York for 5 years, and then the last year, East Brunswick, New Jersey, and my dad was a casting director in New York City, and was also involved in, some level of crime, that I don't know too much about, but I guess he was indicted by the FBI for collecting $100,000 from an undercover federal agent in some type of pyramid or money laundering scheme. At which point, my mom, well, first of all, my mom was a runaway. She ran away from home when she was 13. She's the author of a New York Times bestseller, Smile for the Camera. She was in Playboy magazine, involved in all types of other criminal activity, I guess, what you want to call it. So when my dad got picked up by the feds, while he was doing his sentence, I moved up to San Fernando Valley to stay with his parents, which were my grandparents, with my mom. And part of the conditions of my dad's release was that he was 86 from the state of New York. He couldn't reside there, so that's how we came to live in California.
They made you guys leave New York?
Yeah. For whatever reason, I guess, family connections or ties or criminal stuff that he was involved in. However, he could still work there, so my whole life he would spend like 2 weeks in New York and 2 weeks in California, but he resided officially in the state of California. At the age of 13, I started getting arrested and involved with gangs and drugs and stuff. So I was on probation. So one time when I went to the probation to check in to probation, my parents told the PO that they didn't want to be legally responsible for me, that they felt that I was out of control or, whatever the case may be. At which point my custody was then signed over to the state of California. I was put into a camp program, which I escaped from. So then I lived homeless from the age of 13 to the age of 16. And I was like a punk rocker, homeless, runaway type kid. When I was end of 16 to like early 17, I got picked up by transport officers or whatever they want to call them. Because I wasn't going to school the whole time, so when I started going to school again, I guess I showed up in some type of missing kids thing. So at that point, the transport officers drove me to Laverkin, Utah, where I was incarcerated in a lockdown youth placement facility until my 18th birthday, at which point I was released on my 18th birthday. 2 weeks later, I get pulled over in a car with my friends with guns and drugs, and the friend of mine or homeboy of mine ended up snitching and saying that the backpack full of drugs and guns was mine when in fact was his. And me, I said, no comment, no statement or whatever. So I ended up getting shipped off to state prison at the age of 18. I did 4 years. Got out for about a month or two. Got caught with a firearm. Went back to prison. I went back and forth to prison like that. Getting out and going back within the first couple months or two, about 5 times until the age of to my late 20s. At which point throughout those years, I started becoming involved in what you would call, gang, jailhouse politics and stuff like that. And so I ended up getting released. So I got released after all the time, and I ended up getting indicted myself by the feds for drug distribution and guns and all kinds of other stuff like that. And then I did that sentence, and then after that I got out and had my first son, and then the relationship was actually my baby mom was Salvadorian, and she lived in the MacArthur Park area, which was pretty rough for me, being that I'm from North Hollywood locals and we go at it with MS 13 and 18th Street. So I was constantly having problems in the neighborhood, and then she and I broke up, and I ended up having another son with a baby's mom of mine that I've known since I was 7 years old. And then I picked up another case recently in which the second baby mom bailed me out, and then I went on the run. I stopped going to court, and then I was on the run for like 4 or 5 years. And I just recently finished, or ended up getting picked up and finishing that sentence off. So I did 13 months in the county jail and was released about a month and a half ago. And now here I am today.
Is prison where you got most of these tattoos?
I got all of my tattoos in prison, yeah.
How many years total have you spent behind bars?
I would say probably about 15, 16.
And how old are you?
I'm 40.
You living on the streets now?
Yeah, I'm homeless. The second baby mom, she's a surgery technician. The whole time I was in custody, this last time I was talking to her on the phone, and like every time when the phone would get down to you have 1 minute left, she'd say, "Oh, call me right back." And we were talking the whole time, and I guess she moved to Nevada with my son. And so the day before I get out, she says, I'm going to pick you up at the gate, and you can come back and stay with me in Nevada, this and that. And so then I got released. She asked what time I got released at. I said 8 o'clock. She said, I'll be there. So I get released at 8 o'clock in the morning. She's not there, not answering any calls. One day turns into 2 days, 3 days, and eventually I do get in contact with her, and she says, that she has no intention of coming and picking me up. And so the whole time I thought that I was going to be, going and starting a new life or living in Nevada. I end up being homeless in my neighborhood. I'm strung out, I use fentanyl, crystal meth, Xanax, stuff like that. And You know, I've almost been killed on 4 or 5 different occasions, stabbed and shot and all kinds of stuff. So I'm right back in the middle of all that bullshit. And I went to MacArthur Park last night to score some fentanyl, and the red line station closed before I could get back to the valley, so I got on the wrong bus, ended up in Skid Row area, and that's when I ran into your friend or whatever, and he saw me and asked me a few questions about my life, and asked if I'd be willing to come down here and talk to you guys, and I said yeah.
And do you feel like the life your father lived kind of set you on this path?
I know it did.
Yeah.
But when I was young, when my brother and I were young, all we would watch is Godfather, and all he would teach us omerta, and how you never snitch and all that kind of stuff, and it glorified a lifestyle that I guess seeking out his approval, was fascinated or glorified a lifestyle that leads to nowhere but prisons, institutions, and death. And
What is the fascination with that stuff?
the money, power, and respect.
Mm-hmm.
The fear that you're just the mention of your name, the fear that it holds the power of everyone in the neighborhood, the businesses, the stores, the people, everywhere you go, everything is for free.
Your reputation precedes you.
Yeah. To me, everything was second nature, because from a young age I was instilled in all those the core values of however, whatever you want to call it, a gangster or whatever classification you want to put on it. But to me, it's just what is normal, But I guess it's not, because I guess the courts seem to differ with that point of view of mine.
What do you think people don't understand about you and the life you lead?
That I'm actually I'm a good person. I have a good heart. It's just that knowing that I like 30 seconds before I ran into your friend over there, I had just saved a random stranger. I was walking the street, and this guy is overdosed in the street, and so I Narcaned him back to life. I could have stole all his shit, ripped him off for all his stuff. Like most of the time I've ever overdosed, like happened to me, or I'm a good person, so I know that when someone fucks me over, that I know that they deserve what they have coming, because I don't do anything to anybody that hasn't done something to me.
Mm-hmm. Are your parents still around?
My parents they're around. They're alive.
Do they know your situation?
Yeah, they know my situation. Of course.
Are they trying to help you, or are they kind of...
No, I mean...
They kind of gave up?
I wouldn't say that they gave up. I think that they just I asked them questions. I asked them like, you know, like my younger brother. He okay, like my parents freaked out when I was 13 years old, or 12, 13 years old, experimenting with smoking weed or hanging out with my friends and stuff. When my little brother was doing drugs in the house and living in the house until the age of 25, 26 years old, and I asked my mom and my dad, how come you guys made such a big deal about me at such a young age and you talk but you let my younger brother just do whatever the fuck he wants to do, and they said that, because that we knew that he wasn't strong enough that you to live the life. It's almost like they knew that I either had to live this lifestyle or was destined to live this lifestyle, or I'm not really sure if there's more to it behind the scenes or something, if maybe being the firstborn son or what the case may be, or maybe they just noticed the warning signs, the red flags at a young age, or I'm not sure what they meant by that. But the only thing that my dad disagrees with is the drug trade of in New York they do things differently, as far as out here, whereas the gangs specialize in drug distribution and stuff like that, and my dad looks down on that like it's a low level type of stuff like that. So that's where he disapproves of the lifestyle. But my mom is where I got my strength from. She's a very strong woman. She herself was homeless in the streets since she was 13 years old. And
what happened to her that she ended up a runaway at 13?
I don't call him my grandfather because he's an evil, perverted man. But her father used to molest and rape her and her other brothers and sisters at a young age. She was molested daily by her father, and he would do things like if he didn't like the dinner or that was made at the table, or he didn't like the way that she cleaned the house or something, that he would pull out a 45 caliber at the table and shoot her favorite dog in the head right there at the dinner table and make her clean it up, and just physically, emotionally, sexually abuse her from a young age. So she started saving up money as much as she could, and when she reached a certain age, she ran away from home. And she got into modeling and acting, and that led to being in Playboy magazine, and which led to her being involved in living in the red light district. And I mean her whole life story. She ended up becoming romantically involved in with the guy who ran the apartment. I guess she lived in an apartment building that was ran by whatever type of organization that did those type of things, where the girls each had their own apartment, and it was a red light district type of thing. And she got romantically involved with him to where she went from being one of those girls to running the books for him and doing all that. And until one day there was an argument with him and two other business associates, and the guys that she was involved with, this is prior to her being with my dad, shot both the guys and threw him off the rooftop of the building, and he was arrested for murder. And then they I guess they had an attorney on the payroll back then where he went in there for an attorney visit, and the guy pretended like he got beat up, and then he changed into the lawyer's clothes, and she was waiting outside. It was a getaway driver, and went on a 50-state manhunt until they located the guy that she was with before my dad. And so she wasn't charged or got a slap on the wrist, because I think she was only like 17 or 16, 17 years old at the time. And then so after him, she got with my dad, who was a casting director, and I guess she auditioned for him. And then he ended up taking her out on a date, and whatever the case may be, whatever led after that, I guess she got pregnant with me, and things went from there.
Do you think there's a chance you're going to be in this situation the rest of your life?
Yeah, I think there's the only way out is death.
Fentanyl is that difficult to quit?
It's not. That's just the fentanyl. Fentanyl is something I do to numb the pain of to cope with the fact that I'm involved in a lifestyle that there's no turning back from.
Do you have friends?
I don't have friends. I have associates.
Mm-hmm.
I have homeboys.
Are you still active with the gang?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Do you ever wonder about other paths your life might have taken if you hadn't got involved in some of the street stuff?
Of course. But then again, it's like I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't. It's like I my whole life I thought I wanted to be that person that I saw in the movies, like in Goodfellas or The Godfather and movies like that. But then once I actually reached those realms, or stepped into those lifestyles, and saw the reality of what it really was and what it really entails, and that it wasn't so glorifying. But at that point, it was already too late. It was already too late. Like.
Do you
in and out of prison, it's like I could change my life, right? But I could turn Christian, stop gangbanging, and change my life. But I could be walking down the street, and that doesn't mean the next man isn't gonna say, "Oh, there goes Dopey. Oh wait, but never mind, he's changed his life." It's either go hard or it's kill or be killed, in a sense, and I just try and live that lifestyle as best I can without losing my soul, or losing who I am.
Let me ask you one last question, Dopey. What would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in your life?
That's a good question. I would say that to live your life for yourself and not for someone else. For your own approval, not the approval of anybody else, whether it be a family member or a homeboy or anything. You know, respect yourself, love yourself, because the respect and the love of other people is false, is fake. You know, you can't get something externally that you don't have internally. You know, I would say I would learn to love myself and respect myself instead of seeking it from an outward source, you know?
Mm-hmm. All right. Dopey, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I wish you lots of luck out here. Thanks.
When I was designing the first White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.